First, let's start with the University of Michigan. There are some fun facts you need to know about the university. We are the #1 public university in the United States, and we are also ranked as number 16 in the World Reputation Ranking. And in most academic rankings, we rank among the top 20 best universities in the world. Then we are also the #1 research volume of US public universities. And this year alone, we have spent about $1.7 billion total in research expenditure. So there are 19 schools in the university, schools and colleges, I should say. School of Architecture or College of Architecture and Urban Planning, School of Art and Design, Ross Business School, School of Dentistry, School of Education, College of Engineering, School for the Environment and Sustainability, School of Information, Kinesiology, Law, Literature, Science and the Arts, Medicine, Music, Theater and Dance, and so on and so forth. So if you look to the right of the presentation or the PowerPoint, you'll see many of the areas in which our faculty and students are actively engaged, either research engagement, capacity building, or teaching. So as you can see, our presence on the continent of Africa is huge, and which is why we are also trying to make Africa visible at the University of Michigan by trying to encourage many of you to apply to graduate programs here. Some more fun facts. As I said earlier on, 19 schools and colleges, and our students are from about 139 countries around the world. We have 110 graduate programs, and many of these graduate programs are ranked among the best 10 graduate programs in the world and in the US. So in 2021 alone, there were 502 new inventions reported by many members of our faculty in collaboration with the students they supervise. And there were also 23 new business startups reported in 2021. Then the coolest part of it, which I always like to announce to people, is that we have the biggest stadium in the world. And well, it's not a soccer stadium, but sometimes we do host soccer events there. We've hosted Barcelona, AC Milan, Real Madrid, Chelsea, and several other soccer teams from Europe at the stadium. And the capacity, it's about 120,000 people. Although there might be those who will say that there are two other bigger stadiums. One is in North Korea, the other one is in India, which is a cricket stadium, but we don't reckon with cricket here. So we'll take the credit for having the biggest stadium in the world. And here is an image of what usually takes place every weekend at the University of Michigan here. This is the stadium, and it's always fully packed on Saturdays when there are games being played there. So as you can see, the stadium is all yellow, but we don't call it yellow, we say Wolverine because we are known as the Wolverines. And we usually say go blue because when the stadium is not blue, it is Wolverine in color. Now to the serious business of the day. So just to describe a typical structure of American education: 4-year bachelor's, 2-year master's, then some professional schools will say maybe you need to spend 2 to 5 years in getting a professional degree. And if there are questions about this, I can answer, or any of my colleagues can answer later. Then PhD programs are usually between 5 and 6 years, depending on the discipline. Then a typical 5 to 6 year PhD program will look like this. Year 1, 4 semester, you'll be required to take 3 or 4 intro classes. Then winter semester, 3 or 4 intro classes. Then your second year, 3 advanced classes. Then the winter semester, 2 advanced class and 1 research seminar. Then year 3, you might take 1 research seminar, then mini thesis, or which could be your prospectus. Then year 4, prospectus and research seminar. Then year 5 is when you begin to work on your dissertation. Usually class size for most PhD programs at the University of Michigan are between 5 to 10. It also depends on the discipline, but there are some that are less than 5. Then the ratio of professor to PhD student is 1 to 2. Basically saying that most professors will have 2 students that they are chairing their dissertation committees. So now to understand graduate program at the University of Michigan, so let's start with professional schools. Business school, law school, medicine, public health, social work, nursing, and engineering. Then we can add architecture and urban planning to this. These are some of the professional schools that offer different master's degrees, and they also offer PhD degrees, probably with the exception of the law school. But the difference between professional schools and graduate school is that professional schools are tailored towards those who are interested in furthering their career in the profession that they choose, whether in the business or in business, in medicine, in nursing, in social work, public health, or engineering. So then for graduate school, some of the distinctions we need to bear in mind is that in North America, only graduate schools can award PhD program, PhD. Professional schools can award other doctorates such as a JSD in law, which is Doctor of Jurisprudence, or DBA, Doctor of Business Administration, or DSW, Doctor of Social Work. But PhD in business or medicine or PhD in social work can only be awarded by Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. And at the University of Michigan, we call that the Rackham Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. So masters run for 2 years in North America. There are a few exceptions where you might require to just be there for 1 year. For example, masters in energy at the College of Engineering runs for, I think, 1 year. But the difference between PhD in North America and PhD somewhere else, particularly in Europe, is that in Europe, it runs for between 3 to 4 years, sometimes 2 to 4 years. But in the USA, it is 5 to 6 years. Like I said earlier on, this all depends on the discipline that you are applying to, but it's a minimum of 5 years. Now, admission requirements for masters and PhDs. It looks similar, but it's also a little bit different. So graduate records examination, which we no longer require at the U of M, but some departments may require you to write TOEFL. This is test of English language for foreign, test of English for foreign, test of English. What does the FL stand for, Andres? Or I'm blanking out.
I think it's test of English as a foreign language.
Thank you very much. So test of English as a foreign language. But some departments also accept the IELS, which is required in England and Canada. So if you have written that, you don't have to write TOEFL. You can just submit your test score for that one. Then transcripts. Your transcripts are required. Then you need recommendation letters. Recommendation letters vary from discipline to discipline. There are some that will require 2, there are some that will require 3. Then personal statements, academic statement, and a writing sample. So just to be sure, the application process is holistic. In evaluating your application, all of this will be taken into consideration. So it's not as if one will weigh higher than the other. What I mean by this is that we look at your transcript, then we look at the recommendation letters that you have, then we look at your personal statement, academic statement, and your writing sample. So if all of these are very strong, you stand a good chance or a better chance of getting into the program. So now let's break all of this down. Recommendation letters. So what is required in a recommendation letter are the following. First, your recommender must make sure that what they are writing for you speaks to your academic credentials, and that they are very detailed, and that it shows why you are an exceptional candidate. For example, why should the University of Michigan consider you instead of candidate B that is also applying for the same program as you? So your recommender must show that you have the capacity to do rigorous academic work, and that the letter also points at your academic accomplishments that may not necessarily be captured in your transcripts. Remember, transcripts only show grades, but letters are ways in which we can also know that you have accomplished a lot while you were an undergraduate at the university that you graduated from. And that the letter points at some of the candidates' research accomplishments. So what kind of research background do you have? What have you done in terms of research work in the last 4 years of your undergraduate degree? Or if you've completed a master's degree, what have you done in the last 2 years of your master's degree? And I have to emphasize that writing letters of recommendation for the University of Michigan and any American institution is different from how letters of recommendation are written for schools in Europe and in other African countries. And the reason is that we focus on details here. For example, if you are writing a letter of recommendation to a school in England, the letter might be maybe one or 2 paragraphs long. But if you write that to a program you are applying to at the University of Michigan, your application is not going to be taken seriously, because 1 or 2 paragraphs is not enough to explain your academic credentials to those who are going to be looking at your application. So you have to tell whoever is going to write a letter for you to take into consideration all of these important elements. And what I would recommend you do is that before you apply, give ample notice to those who are going to write letters for you, and give your curriculum vitae or resume to the person who is going to write a letter for you, because your resume or your CV will say a lot about what you have accomplished outside of your transcript. And those who can write letters for you, I will also recommend, are those you've taken classes with, either during your undergraduate degree program or your master's degree program. So those you've taken classes with and those that you know can speak very well about your academic credentials. Those are the people that you should approach to write a letter for you. And I should also add that someone who is going to be writing a letter for you has to be someone who is qualified to write that letter. What I mean by this is that I know many of our colleagues in many African universities teach with a master's degree, and they are still doing their PhD. They're still trying to get their PhD. So if you approach such a person who doesn't already have a PhD or is not a professor to write a letter for you when you are applying to a PhD program, I'm not sure many of those who will be evaluating your application will take that seriously. So I'll recommend that you approach some of your professors who are either senior lecturers or have become professors in their field to write such a letter of recommendation for you. Now, academic statement. This is one of the most important elements in the application process. So remember, you are applying to a PhD program or you are applying to a master's program. So you have to write this academic statement that will demonstrate your academic interest or emphasize your academic interest. And in emphasizing your academic interest, you have to be specific about your proposed research topic. And remember, you can propose a research topic. That doesn't mean when you are admitted, if you are no longer feeling good about that research topic, you are almost always welcome to change your topic. But when you are writing your academic statement, you have to show that this is what you are interested in studying. Then you have to show familiarity with the literature in the field. If you are applying to anthropology or applying to linguistics or applying to English, then you have to show that you are familiar with some of the current debates in the field that you are applying to. I am not saying that academic statement should explain that you are now a scholar. No, that is not the goal. The goal here is to show that you already know what you are trying to get into. Then you have to show familiarity with some of the work of some of the professors in the department you are applying to. So if you are applying to a department where I am going to be reading your application and you say part of why you are interested in working in the region where I work is because you want to write about something of interest to you there. But at the same time, you have to be mindful that I've written a lot of things about this area. So you have to include that in your statement that, look, well, you know that this social professor is working in this area, and that is the reason why you are interested in working with them. So show familiarity. Then originality is also key. And again, you have to demonstrate why your research topic is significant. And how feasible is this research topic? And what are the potentials that it will contribute to scholarship? So these are some of the things that you need to put into consideration in writing your academic statement. Then what are your plans post-graduation? So do you want to work in industry, for example, or do you want to work in an academic setting? If that is your goal, you have to show that in your academic statement. Personal statement. This is one of the areas of the application that I enjoy reading when I read students' applications, and many of my colleagues will corroborate this. This is where you tell your own story. What are some of the challenges you have faced in life? And how did you overcome these challenges? What are some of your strengths and weaknesses? For example, all of us have got strengths and all of us have got weaknesses. So do not say in your application that, well, I'm always strong, I don't have any weakness. That will be telling a lie. So you have to show that, okay, there are some weaknesses that you have, but what we want to see in your personal statement is how do you overcome sometimes some of these weaknesses? And remember, stories of your personal and family struggles can be told here. And I'm not saying or suggesting that you need to go into details of all your personal and family struggles. But if it makes sense and connects to why you are interested in pursuing a new degree, it is worth telling. Then, if you graduated long time ago and you are trying to get back to the academic setting, maybe you got your first degree or undergraduate degree 5, 10, 17 years ago, and now you want to pursue a master's or a PhD program. So talk about the gaps in your education. Talk about your gaps, the gaps. Why is it that you've been out of school for so long and you want to go back to school now? So it's important to state that. Maybe you've been working in a field and you want to change career. That is important to also talk about in your personal statement. Then gaps in your education. What are the bad spots in your academic record? For example, not every transcript is a perfect transcript. Maybe there are some courses or classes that you struggled with. You expected you were going to get an A and you ended up with a D in that class. So that is not a bad thing. So it could be that you were struggling with something at that point in time, and that was why your grade in that particular class was bad. So don't be ashamed to say that in your personal statement. So what we want to see is how you overcame challenges that you faced in your education. So if you make that clear in your personal statement, well, that will explain why you got a D instead of a B or an A. But at the same time, do not get too personal, just like I explained earlier on. Do not get cutesy. Just stay professional in all that you write in your personal statement. Now, writing sample. A lot of people usually have questions about writing sample. What stands as a writing sample? An example of a paper you have previously written for a class will stand as a writing sample. Maybe if you wrote a thesis for your master's and you are applying for a PhD, or you wrote an undergraduate thesis and you are applying to a PhD program, so you can maybe send us some chapters from this thesis, maybe 1 chapter or 2 chapters. But if you've written academic works too, you can send examples of this. So what the committee wants to see is your writing skills and how coherent your thoughts are. So it is not whether the argument you are making in the paper is very sound or not, but how coherent are you in the paper that you've written. And it does not have to be academic, but if it is, organization, content, and argument will be necessary. So no one is going to evaluate you on the basis of how sound your arguments are, but your paper will be evaluated on the basis of how good the organization is, then the content of the paper, as well as how coherent you are in your thoughts. So basically, to recap, what the application review process looks like are the following. So applications are reviewed by committees made up of professors in the discipline you are applying to. So it's all going to be read by those who are in the department that you are applying to, and committee members are interested in strong candidates whose research interests align with those of the colleagues in the department. Then recommendation letters confirm research interest of the candidate, and your transcript shows that you've taken relevant courses with good grades. So U of M does not require GRE anymore, but TOEFL as well as IELTS might be required by some departments. Then writing sample shows coherence and good organization. rejection is part of life. So don't take it personally, but you must be committed and invested in what you are doing. So everyone will apply to the University of Michigan, but not everyone is going to be admitted. We have to be frank and honest with you. But like I said, rejection is part of life. So if you fail this year, that doesn't mean you cannot apply next year. You are always welcome to reapply if you are not admitted this year. So funding. Master's programs are typically not funded, but there might be few available scholarships in some departments. And these scholarships are usually highly competitive. But PhD programs are fully funded. And typically, this might involve research or teaching assistantships. And remember, being a teaching assistant is part of your training. That is the way in which PhD programs are designed in the United States to train you to become a scholar and a teacher. So teaching assistantship is part of your training. But research assistantship is also available. So basically in your 5 years or 6 years in a PhD program, using anthropology, which is my discipline as an example, so first 2 years might be taking classes, then your third, fourth year, you will serve as graduate student instructors under a professor that teaches some large classes. And your role as a GSI will be to grade students' papers, set students' exams, and also teach sections of the class. And that is to prepare you for life in the academy, life of teaching and life of scholarship. And for those who work in the labs, you might be part of a lab working on a project. And in the Q&A session, many of my colleagues here will throw more light on what I just said. Yeah, Q&A, questions? Okay, I see some hands.
Omolade, Professor Penaran and I have been answering questions in the Q&A during the presentation, so people can post there, or I guess we, if I don't know, we can try and see if people raise their hands and ask a question verbally, although I know sometimes the sound is difficult, but we can try that.
Okay.
I saw that several people had their hands raised.
Yeah, but I think they lowered them again because they disappeared. Oh, now there's 5 hands raised. But let me quickly say something about application fee waivers, since there's been a couple of questions about that. The application fee for a PhD at University of Michigan for international students is currently $90, 90 US dollars. And usually it's very difficult to get application fee waivers. We have a limited number of waivers available this year for students applying from Africa, coming from a donor to the African Studies Center. So after today's webinar, we will send a follow-up email to everybody who registered for the webinar with information about that potential waiver. Now, I don't think we can offer a waiver to everybody, but, I will send an email with information about the waiver program and how you can apply for that. Lade, do you want to call on people with raised hands? I think you'll need to give them permission to talk.
Okay, let me call up a few of those. Ooh. All right, Sunday. Sunday.
Hello. Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. I want to ask, what is the difference between here in Africa, Nigeria here? What is the difference between SOP, that is the statement of purpose, and academic? Okay, you make an academic statement. I want to get that. You make mention of, you analyze academic statement, a personal statement. So can we say the personal statement is the statement of purpose and the academic statement is the research I want to go for in the school? I don't get it through.
That's a very good question. Statement of purpose is the academic statement.
Okay.
Then personal statement is different.
Okay.
For the University of Michigan, we emphasize personal statement and academic statement. But for some other universities, the requirement might be different. But for us, it is academic statement and personal statement. And just like I said earlier on, in your academic statement, we want to see what your interest in terms of academic research are.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next is Emmanuel. Emmanuel. You are muted.
Good morning, Prof.
Good morning.
Yes, thank you very much. Although the network has been kind of hectic, but I've been trying to pick one or two things. So my question goes though. Are you with me, sir? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir. I'm trying to apply to University of Michigan for a PhD program. I have BSc, and I also have postgraduate diploma in education. But at the moment, I've almost completed my master's from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, Nigeria. But due to this current ASU strike, I've not been able to defend my research, my master's research. But I have my coursework because ASU has been on strike and you can't even go and defend research to obtain the certificate. So that's just my question, sir.
Yeah, Andres, do you want to answer that, or Jim?
Sure, I can say something about that. And, you know, Jim and Omolade, you should chime in if I am incomplete or inaccurate. Yeah. As far as I understand it, to be eligible to apply for a PhD study at the University of Michigan, you need to have the equivalent of a 4-year bachelor's degree, right? In the United States, our bachelor's degrees are 4 years, then followed typically by a 5-year PhD. So if your bachelor's degree, as is often true in Africa, was only a 3-year degree, then you will need a second degree like a master's degree in order to be eligible to apply. So it depends on what your bachelor's degree was like. If it was just a 3-year degree, you would need to complete the master's before you're eligible to apply to a PhD. But if your bachelor's was already a 4-year degree, then you should be eligible. But you know, it's complicated and one would need to look at your specific case. So we probably can't answer it in detail here, but that's the short answer.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I agree.
Yeah, me too. All right. Obinna.
Okay. Good afternoon, Prof.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I have two questions to ask. One of the question is concerning recommendation letter. Say I have completed my first degree and as well as master's degree. Must the recommendation letter comes from the two programs I've run, say professors in the two programs, or I could decide to work with professors whom I've interacted with at the undergraduate program alone? That is one of the questions. Then the second question is, are you with me, Prof?
Yes, we are here.
Okay. The second question is, just as the other person mentioned, here in Nigeria, where I am, we are currently having ASU strike. I have completed a master's, have defended my thesis at University of Ibadan, but I'm yet to get my transcript. Now, my question is, I have all my results available, which was posted. Can I submit an unofficial transcript that is prepared by me, though I haven't gotten the one student copy from the school? Will that be permitted? Those are my questions.
Jim, do you want to?
Sure, I can try. I mean, so I think you should submit the unofficial transcript. I think you should also reach out to the department that you're applying to and let them know what you're doing. We want to admit students. We don't want to get hung up on the details. That said, there are some requirements for ultimately getting your visa, getting the formal admission. I think we are going to need the official transcript at some point. But I would encourage you to just let the department know. I can't promise what will happen with the we can be a bit bureaucratic, and I'm not sure what happens if you submit the unofficial transcript to the graduate school. I don't quite know the flow of the paperwork, but I would reach out to the department so that an actual person knows what's going on and can perhaps intervene and make sure that gets handled. I speaking when I've been on admissions committees, I'm happy to look at the unofficial one, but I know that we do need the official transcript before we can formally admit you. I hope that helps.
Yeah. Then as for recommendation letters, I would say it might be great. It might be good to get one of your letters from your undergraduate professors, then other letters from your master's degree professors. All right, David Awuru.
Hi, good day, sir. It's David Akuru. Okay, can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was going to ask, like, regarding the research, statements, the research interest statement. I was going to ask, would you advise for example, I don't have any publication yet, but I already have like some of my academic work, especially my coursework. I had my master's in the UK. So most of my coursework, the ones I did well, I had to like upload them to like a private repo. Would you advise I also, maybe while writing my research interest statement, would you advise I provide a link to those repo, just in case I'm trying to at least like make my statement to be like very valid? Would you advise I maybe attach a link to it, just in case the reviewer wants to like check on it? That's my first question. Then my second question is, I wanted to, I don't know if it's available on the web page, but I wanted to know like the amount of students that are actually admitted into the computational medicine and bioinformatics like program. And out of those amount of students like admitted, I want to know if there is a cap size for international students and a cap size for domestic students as well, or they are all given like equal opportunities.
I can answer the last part of your question. when applications are being evaluated, no one looks at where the applicant is coming from. Yep. So the application process is holistic. We don't look at countries, we don't look at regions, we just look at the application and how good the application materials submitted to the units are. So not, so there are, we don't operate a quota system where we say there is a certain number of Africans to be admitted, certain number of Americans to be admitted. Everyone comes to the admissions table on equal basis. So Jim and Andres, do you want to take the other part of the question?
Well, I can try to. The only caveat I would add, Lade, is that in some of the programs there are some funding sources that are limited to U.S. citizens. So in particularly some of the National Institutes of Health have they fund a significant number of students in the biomedical area, and many of those are limited to U.S. citizens. So that is a distinction. But beyond that, I agree completely. We don't look at it. We just want to admit the best students. Now, as far as the chances of admission, what the statistics are, that's going to vary enormously from department to department. I believe that is on the graduate school website, but I haven't been able to find that link yet. If I can find that, I'll put that in the chat. But we do publish the statistics. I think we publish the statistics on the fraction that are admitted. I know we publish statistics on where graduate students go to. And that's I think very important to look at where our graduates go once they complete their degrees. We make a real point of publishing that, and I would point out that everybody doesn't, and so you might ask if they don't, why they don't. But that's a different question.
that information is available on the Rackham website. I will post the link in the chat so that everybody can go and look that up if they want to for their departments. So you go to that link, and then you can follow through that to get to it. It's a slow website. It takes a while to load, but you can get to different departments and see all their various statistics about number of applications, number of admissions, and information like that.
All right, thank you. Ibukun.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I want to ask, if one gets admitted to the US, which type of visa does one need? Because I've heard about F1, J2, J1 visas. So which type of student visa do one need? And also, how, if maybe I've gotten the visa, I've gotten the flight tickets, okay, I'm now in the US, how do I sort out accommodation for like 1 month, 2 months, before I familiarize myself with the environment or the university area? Thank you. And also, you were saying something about application fee waiver, but my network was shaky. I didn't hear it clearly. Maybe you can try and repeat it. Thank you.
Andres, do you want to talk about the application waiver again?
Sure. I will answer a few of the questions. I don't think I heard all of them, so the rest of you augment where I leave something out. Most of our international students come on a so-called F visa. That's a student visa. And in order to apply for that visa, you need to be admitted. You get all the paperwork from the University of Michigan that you need to apply for the visa. And virtually all of our students who apply for the visa are successful. There's sometimes complications, but usually the visa application is successful, because if you're admitted by a place like University of Michigan, which is a well-known university, and you're admitted with funding, which virtually all our PhD students are, then it's usually not a problem to get the visa. Although, we know it takes time and people need to start early, and sometimes you need to do extra steps to get an appointment, but usually it works out. In terms of finding housing, that is a difficult problem that all our students face, international and domestic students, although it's definitely more complicated if you're an international student. I don't have an answer for how that happens. There is university housing available for graduate students. There's also websites where you can look for private housing off campus. If I think about my own home department, the Department of Linguistics, where about half of our graduate students, our PhD students, are international, usually the way that they find housing is we put them in contact with our current PhD students, and the students usually know better how the housing works than we as the professors. And then working with the other students in the department, they usually figure out housing. I think I missed the rest of the question. So Jim or Ladek, you answer the rest.
On the housing, I mean, it is very hard, and there is some university housing, but most students live off campus. I posted a link in the chat to a website that gives some information. And I'm sorry, I forget what the other part of the question was.
I think we've answered all of the questions, but just to add to the housing part, the best option most of the time is the moment you get your admission letter and you know you are going to accept it, start looking for housing early. In most cases, by March, April, a lot of houses around campus are already signing contracts for the next academic year. So if you start early, you get a place.
Okay, sir.
Next is, sorry, I'm just randomly picking names here. Oluwaseyi.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
All right. So, so my question is, though someone already asked the question, but there was a part that I didn't really get clarifications on recommendation. Okay, so I am done with my bachelor's and also my master's in chemistry. So I currently work in a company as a lab technician in a company. So I wanted to ask, is it possible from the part of the recommendation, can I have representative from my company write the recommendation? Also, I also have professors. I also have professors from my school that I graduated for that can also do that. But I just wanted to know, can I have maybe my boss in my company to write the recommendation for me? That's just the question. Thank you, sir.
Well, since I'm in chemistry, that's probably mine to answer.
Yeah.
But I would say that this is a fairly general answer, and it would apply to any of the STEM fields. And the answer is it depends a little bit on what you're doing and what your supervisor can say about it. I mean, if you are engaged in research, then that would be great, and having your supervisor would be spectacular. I think having some of your professors would be good as well. And you're allowed multiple reference letters, and I'd say that having somebody that can talk about what you did during your studies, and somebody else that can talk about what you're doing right now would be very powerful. It would depend on what the details of what exactly you're doing right now in your company, whether it would be especially useful. But I think that, yeah, I mean, a supervisor that can say, this student, really knows what they're doing. They're doing this great job on this particular project would be something we definitely want to see. So yeah, I think that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. All right, Samuel. Samuel, you're muted. Samuel Muyetwari. Okay, we'll move to the next person. Uche Chukwu.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good day, everyone. Okay. I just have two questions. I studied urban and regional planning for my BSc. Then I went further to do a master's degree in environmental management. Okay, so one of the professors answered my question that there is no funding for master's degree, or I should try maybe a PhD. But the thing I'm having confusion about is, like, apart from my research work during my master's program, I've not really written like papers or articles and stuff like that. So I don't know if it's a good chance for me, or if I have a chance of applying for a PhD.
Sorry, so Lada, sorry for jumping in here. I think this is a question that I often get when I go to Africa. And that's a fundamental difference between the US higher education system and the system in most of the rest of the world. It is very typical in the US system for people to do a 4-year bachelor's degree and then go directly into a 5-year PhD degree without doing a master's degree in the middle. So usually American students have only 2 degrees, a 4-year bachelor's, a 5-year PhD. So it isn't necessary to come to the US and first do a master's degree and then apply to a PhD. If you already have a master's degree, then you should just apply directly to the PhD program. There's another reason why that is good to do, and that is that PhD study at the University of Michigan and at most major American universities, PhD study is usually funded. So you get a tuition waiver, a stipend to live on. So usually PhD study is funded. Master's study is usually not. So if you want to do a master's degree at Michigan or another American university, you would typically have to fund it yourself. So the profile that you've described, I would say it's better to apply directly to a PhD. What you would need to show, as Omolade has said in the application, in your research or academic statement or statement of purpose, whatever we call it, is that you are prepared to conduct research, because a PhD is a research degree. You can show that by talking about your research experiences as an undergraduate student, as a master's student, and about the kind of research that you anticipate doing while you're in the PhD program.
Yeah, it's not essential that you have already done it.
Yeah, it's not necessary to have published research to get into a PhD program.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think I'll give that a try. Yeah, because I already have my results and everything ready.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that answered the previous question that we forgot to answer about writing samples, whether it has to be published in an academic journal or not. No, it doesn't have to be published in an academic journal. So what we want to see is how good you are at writing about what you want to do or what you are doing right now. So even if the writing sample is not related to the kind of research you plan to do in your PhD or master's program, we just want to see how coherent your thoughts are. So it doesn't have to be published. We don't expect you getting out of undergraduate education and being published in an academic journal. No. And the same goes for if you are getting out of a master's program. So we don't expect you to be already publishing in academic journals. So writing samples are just your basic writing. We want to see how good you are at writing.
Okay.
Samuel? Samuel?
Yes, Prof, I'm hearing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm Samuel. I've got 2 questions to ask.
Go ahead.
Previously, I've been reading on your official website, the website of the University of Michigan, but I didn't see clearly about how many programs actually do you have. So I needed to know, do you have programs, masters, either masters or PhD in biotechnology, in clinical research, and in public health? That is my first question. The second question, can we have someone to guide us along this application process? Because it is not an easy process, we will be getting challenges. Do we get contact of anyone to ask in case we are challenged? Those are my two questions.
Jim or Andres?
Well, I can take a stab maybe on the second question. This came up in a number of the questions that we've that Andres and I have tried to type answers to about the I'm sorry, I forget what the kinds of a background that you have. Yeah, I'm sorry, I distracted myself and I don't remember exactly what the question was that I was answering.
It's about getting help to prepare.
About getting help, yes. I'm sorry, yes, of course. That you absolutely are free to write to any of us. As I think Professor Kutsi noted, that many of us get dozens, hundreds of messages a week, and so you may not get a reply. It is not necessary to write to somebody. That admissions in most cases are not handled by individual faculty. So it's not that I admit graduate students to our program, it's that we have an admissions committee. And so writing to individual faculty will not necessarily give you, it doesn't give you an advantage on getting admitted, but it might give you some information. So you might, an appropriate question might be, I'm interested in your research. Are you going to be taking graduate students next fall to work in your area? That's a question that I get frequently. And so I think that's entirely appropriate. If someone's not going to be taking students and you want to know that may not be somebody that you want to apply to work with. I hope that answers the second part of your question. I totally forget what the first part was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Andres, go ahead.
No, I don't have anything to add to Jim's answer. But maybe let me answer a question that I have seen a few times in the Q&A. And I also see that we've gained some people since we've talked about it earlier. Application fees. It's $90 for international students to apply to a PhD program at University of Michigan. Usually there aren't fee waivers available for the application. This year, we have a limited number of waivers funded through a gift from a donor, and we will send information after the webinar to everybody who registered for the webinar about how to apply for a waiver. We can't, in all likelihood, offer waivers to everybody who applies, but there will be a process for which you can ask for a waiver. But otherwise it's $90. Then I've also seen a couple of questions in the Q&A where people ask, what if my undergraduate degree was in chemistry and now I want to study physics, or in English and now I want to study anthropology? Is it okay to change? I think it's absolutely okay, right? I mean, yeah. I don't think you need to have an undergraduate degree in chemistry to study a PhD in chemistry. You need to show in your application that you are capable to do the work that is required in the PhD program that you're applying to. So if your undergraduate degree is in a different field, you would need to show through some other means that in spite of that, say through other work experiences you've had, through other independent research you've done, that you are capable to do the work in the degree you're applying for.
Yeah, just to add to that, I'll use myself as an example. My first degree is in philosophy. Then I did a master's in politics and political economy, African studies, and ended up doing a PhD in anthropology. So you can absolutely do that. If you think you want to change, you are welcome to change, as long as you are able to demonstrate that what you are changing to is relevant to what you want to do. Then one other thing about Samuel's question. So when you write your academic and personal statements, I will recommend that you share with your colleagues and friends to help you take a look at it, because sometimes, you know, having someone else to look at what you've written can help you polish some of the ideas you have there. So it's absolutely okay to share your ideas, share your writing with colleagues before submitting. Then the second point I'll make is that, you know, I've seen in applications where some applicants forget to take out the name of other schools they're applying to. I'll use an example. You know, someone is applying to the University of Michigan and also applying to another university. And the application looks, maybe the personal statement or academic statement that you are writing looks similar. But remember to don't forget to take out, you know, to put in University of Michigan if it is University of Michigan that you are applying to. So don't say, oh, I like the University of Florida because of what they do, and you submit the application to the University of Michigan. So that is going to annoy a lot of people. So bear that in mind.
If I can just add one point to the discussion about switching areas, I would just note that many of our programs are extremely interdisciplinary. So not only is it reasonable to switch, that it's often desirable that we want students from a variety of different backgrounds. And that's something that distinguishes many of our programs from a lot of other places.
All right, Usama. Usama.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. So my name is Osama. I'm calling from Nigeria. So my question is that you already answered my question because I'm asking about application fee waiver. But I have another question. I'm currently doing my MSc here in Nigeria. So can I include my MSc in my application, though I did not finish? So that is my question.
Andres or Jim?
I mean, it sounds to me as if you meet the eligibility requirements, right? So you have a 4-year degree or a 3-year degree plus a master's degree. As long as you meet those requirements, you can apply. And then if you are busy with yet another degree that hasn't been completed, you can certainly include that information in the application because it's part of your profile and part of what, you know, tells us who you are and what you can do.
Yeah, I think we want to know why it is that you want to leave. It could be very helpful.
Okay.
All right, so we'll take 2 more questions and round up. Oye, Tunde. Hello, you're muted.
On mute. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Abiola Yetunde. Yeah, so please, I want to ask 2 questions. My undergraduate degree was in guidance and counseling from Nigeria here, and I'm planning to switch to a master's of science in criminology and criminal justice. So I just want to know, because on the website today, I'm not seeing the language requirements and if there is need for that. So I want to ask if there is need for graduates, if there is need for proficiency, English proficiency, like for the fact that I'm in Nigeria, I'm from Nigeria. And my second question is if there's any graduate assistantship, like in the long run, maybe after the admission decision has been done also.
I just posted the information on the chat function again to the page where the language proficiency requirements are discussed. The answer is it depends. So we can't answer for every individual person because it depends on which university you studied at, what's the language of instruction at that university, whether you did an undergraduate degree or a master's degree. So you can look at the page I just posted to find information on that. Usually, students apply, and then if there's questions about their eligibility based on the language requirement, the department to which you apply might follow up and say, we need evidence of your English proficiency exam or waiver. But a good place to begin is this page that we just posted. And then I think your other question was about fellowships or research assistantships or something like that. So typically for PhD study, students are admitted with funding so that you don't have to separately apply for funding. So students are usually admitted with a funding package for the full duration of the PhD. And that might be composed of a combination of fellowships and teaching assistantships and research assistantships. But it's not something that you apply for at the time that you apply for admission to the PhD program. That is a separate, happens later, not something to worry about at this point.
Yeah. Just to add to that, when we say full funding, it means full scholarship.
Yeah.
So this covers tuition and fees and a small stipend. I mean, it's not huge. You're not going to get wealthy earning a PhD.
Yeah, so somebody asked in the Q&A whether they can support their family on the funding. I think that would be very difficult and maybe not possible. The funding is covering your tuition and fees, and the stipend that is typically enough to live on for one person, but yes, not live like a rich person, but live for one person.
Can I just make a comment? There have been a number of questions about timing. Almost all of our programs start in the fall. The application deadlines vary a little bit from program to program, but mostly they are between December 1st and January 1st. So if you want to start next fall, so if your program is finishing sometime in the next 9 months, you should be applying now to programs.
And when my colleague says fall, he means September.
I'm sorry.
Some of you are in the Southern Hemisphere,
yes,
or in parts of the world where the fall is called not the fall, but the autumn. But it means September. Our academic year starts in September. So you'll be applying now for the academic year starting next year, September.
Thank you for translating.
So we'll take maybe one or two more questions. Elijah. Oh, sorry. I did the wrong.
And we're clearly not going to answer all the questions. That is just not possible. We're recording this webinar. We will share the link afterwards. So if your question wasn't answered, you can listen to the webinar again. It probably was answered somewhere.
Abidemi.
All right, thank you very much, sir, for having me. My name is Abidemi. I'm from Nigeria. I would like to know about the prospect of a candidate whose research interest does not really align with that of the professors in the department to which that person intends to apply into. For instance, let's say I'm a student of federalism, and my research interest lies in Nigerian federalism in particular, and that is the area in which I want to work on at PhD level. And all the lecturers, for instance, in the Department of Maybe Politics at the Department of University of Michigan, none of them is very, very much well-versed or do not really have the capacity to be able to supervise a research area that's very, very much domiciled in Nigeria. So what would you advise a student like me, for instance, do in such situation? Do I have to change my research interest to be in line with that of the professors in the department? Then another question which I would like to ask is, the PhD program, based on what you have been saying, runs for 5 to 6 years. Now, in most cases here in Nigeria, PhD programs run for minimum of 3 years, sometimes 4, if maybe there's an issue with maybe union strike and unforeseen contingency happening along the line. So, and with what you also explained about some coursework, the only reason why we do have coursework here is maybe someone with master's degree who is unable to graduate with PhD degree, for instance, we have to take some courses again at PhD level. But if the person is able to get a PhD grade, then there really isn't any need for that candidate to go through any coursework whatsoever. So the person will just go straight to dissertation. So I want to know the reason why there is such a difference for a PhD program at the United States or at the University of Michigan. So those are my questions.
I can take the first part on federalism. I guess this is your interest is in political science or in anthropology. But the thing is, you may not see specific mention of federalism in what a lot of our colleagues do, and I know a lot of our colleagues in the Department of Political Science work on issues of federalism and issues of democratization in many parts of Africa. So you see many of them, like Mpicha and several others, they work on issues of federalism in Southern Africa. So it doesn't have to be specifically mentioned that I am doing this before you think about how your research interest aligns with those of the professors in the department. So you have to think deeper and figure out who works in your area and not.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, I hate to to say this, but sometimes we're not the right place for students to come. If there's, you should look carefully at what people are doing and not just look for a keyword. But there may be areas of it doesn't sound like federalism is one of them, but there may be areas of research where we just don't have good coverage. And if that's the case, then you shouldn't come here. But that's going to be very rare. We do almost everything.
And maybe this is a good place for me to also chime in. Oh my, I see we're quite a bit over time. It is generally good if you apply to PhD programs to apply to more than one university. Of course, we want you to apply to University of Michigan, but the reality is that applications are very competitive, right? We can only admit a small number of the people who apply. And that means that there's going to be many excellent students who don't get admitted to Michigan, not because they are not excellent students, but because, you know, we get 100 applications and we can admit 6 or 7 people. So it is good to find more than one university where you think there are people who share your research interests and maybe apply to a few more than just one. Of course, I realize that comes with additional cost because you'll have to pay application fees every time, and that sometimes might make it impossible to do. But what Jim said is really important. I mean, you need to find an intellectual match, right? So because we get, I'm thinking not just about my own department, 120 applications for 5 or 6 positions every year. We really look for applicants who share research interests with what we ourselves do. So, you know, we get 120 applications, 30 of them are excellent students. We pick the 6 whose research really matches ours well. So you need to find where in the US is there a department where your research interests will be met. And that's where you have to apply.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for attending the webinar today. And if you want to replay some of the, or you want to see some of the things we said again in this webinar, you can go to our website to check out the video. And if you have more questions, please feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to answer. all of your questions.
Are you going to post our email contacts, or has that been posted? Because that there's some questions I haven't been able to answer yet.
Oh, okay. I can just post the.
But what we will do is later this week, share with you a link to the recording of the webinar, a link to how to apply for an application fee waiver, and we can also put contact information there for additional questions. So be on the lookout for a message from us in the next few days. Today is Wednesday, maybe it will only happen early next week. In the next week, you should get a follow-up message from us.
Okay, all right. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your evening and great rest of your day for those who are still in the morning. Thank you. Bye.